this big guy. Oh, look at that big guy. Oh, hey guys, it's the Unlocked Farmer. Didn't see you there. Just checking out my squash. Hey, wait a minute. I'm doing a video on how to grow squash. Squash is one of my favorite plants to grow. In fact, it's honestly my favorite plant to grow. Peppers being up there because I love growing peppers, but out of all the plants that treat me with love and respect, squash always is there. It's like that, it's just like that perfect wife, you know? They're always there to provide, they give you good food, plenty of food, they care for you, they don't cause too much trouble, and they're just really good to look at, you know what I'm saying? And the only problem is they like to take control a little bit too much, but you know, it's not that bad because with what they provide, the benefits far outweigh the cons here. But anyways, besides all that nonsense, I'm going to show you how to grow squash. Squash is an easy plant to grow. You just got to keep in mind a few things. Now when we're first talking about how to grow squash, we want to think about planting space. Now squash, unlike summer squash, and I'm talking about winter squash, I forgot to mention that. Winter squash grows out in a vine kind of form here. As you can see, I have squash laid out across my whole yard. Now normal people wouldn't do this because, as you can see, the grass is growing up in between the squash because with my stupidity, I didn't put mulch down before I planted the squash. Didn't think that through. Thought I was gonna put the mulch down after, and yeah, obviously that's really difficult. So as we see here, it's a little dirty, so mind that. But yes, squash do take up a lot of space. So when you're planting squash, and I will say at an inch deep, plant the seeds. I will recommend planting them directly into the ground. You can transplant squash. They will take just fine to a transplant, but it's kind of just useless because you can just plant them straight in the ground and they'll do just fine. A lot of other seeds are kind of finicky. A lot of squash seeds germinate. I will tell you this, they're a good germinator. I don't have too much problem with that. But what I say is plant them mindfully, okay? They will take, and this isn't a fully grown squash. All this stuff out here, it'll keep going far into October. When you plant squash, you want to at least stick to 18 inches apart. And that's at least. And I think I'm right about there, probably even closer because I'm a little ballsy and pushed it. They will do fine. It's just managing them is a little harder. You can cram squash together. It's just you're gonna have vines all over the place. All over the place. You'll have tons of squash. You'll just have a problem with other things that I'll get to very shortly. So 18 inches apart from each squash plant at the very bare minimum. I recommend 20 to 24 inches. And that's probably gonna be a little more comfortable for you. And then you can plant those in rows, but keep the rows 6 feet apart, all right? Because these will stretch out. These will take up space. Now, the reason that you don't want to plant them super dense is because they can run into disease issues. And that is because of airflow. You see, when there's a lot of leaves on the ground sprawled out, and these are pruned, I prune them, and I keep up pruning them. But they can be very thick and dense. There can be just leaves everywhere. And you might think, oh, air can get through there, but it doesn't get through there as good as you think. And unfortunately, and if you live in a dry environment, it might be a little better off, but here in Indiana, Northwest Indiana, it's very humid. So in the summertime, if I plant these super dense and just leave them to go, like don't prune them, you know, it's gonna be a problem. It's gonna create disease. These things are always prone to powdery mildew. They have other diseases like downy mildew and a few others, But the one you want to take care of the most, because it can just destroy your whole crop, and it's very common, especially in humid climates, is powdery mildew. Now that just, and I have it right now, by the way, and I'll show it to you in a second. It's kind of like just little powdery specks on the plant, and not specks, but little spots you'll see, and it'll spread across the plant more and more and more. You'll see it on the other side. That's where the powdery mildew actually sits, is on the other side. It starts there, and then it, on the underside, sorry, and then it kind of works its way up. So you're gonna want to watch out for that. But if you live in a dry climate, you might be a lot better off. But that is one of the biggest diseases to look out for. As far as pests are concerned, well, there's another pest that's like, you see, squash are great, but they have a lot of problems with disease and pests. Not a lot. I'm not saying there's a lot. I'm just saying the ones that they do have, they're a pain in the ass. So one of the biggest pests that you'll have to find and deal with is the squash vine borer. Now when it comes to winter squash, they don't, I don't really have too much of a problem with them. They're more so my summer squash they'll focus on. But they can do winter squash as well. And what that bug is, if I can talk, is that it's a little moth that will actually lay its eggs inside the base of the main stalk of the squash that leads into the ground. It'll carve into it, lay its eggs, and then those larvae will actually feed up into the middle of the squash, because these the squash and all the same family, you know, they have hollow, I don't know the correct term off the top of my head, but the stems are all hollow inside. So these little larvae like to go inside and feast on your squash, which is a pain in the ass, because if they go too far, they can actually kill your plant. Now, I've actually never had a plant die from one of these. I've taken care of them. One thing you can use that's not going to be a chemical thing or anything dangerous is bacterial insecticide called BT. What that is just it's a bacteria. It won't harm you, but what it will do is caterpillars will eat it, or larvae will eat it, and it'll actually stop them from eating because they won't want to eat anymore, and they'll just die off from starvation. So that's the only thing you can do to pretty much get rid. If you already have a squash vine borer inside your squash, take a syringe or some sort of something that you can stick this the substance, the BT substance inside of it, and inject it into that, and just watch. You will wait, and you'll have no more problems. To prevent it, and I forgot to do it this season, but I will do it next season. All you have to do is just take something to wrap around the base of the squash, and you'll have no problems. All right, as long as you wrap around that base, they're not going to come in through the top of it or something. They're going to go through the base. So as long as that's wrapped up and covered, and they can't get through, you're good to go. As far as disease and pests are concerned, that's what you want to look out for. Now, when you want to enjoy your squash, I have a few here. As you can see here, I have a few squash that are, well, I have a lot of squash all over the place. I have 8 plants total. These are second year squash. I saved these from I saved the seeds from my last year and actually planted those this year. And over time, they'll just adapt to my environment and actually do a lot better, as long as they don't cross-pollinate and with other squashes and change the genetics. But so as you can see here, these squash are not done at all. All right, they might look like they could be done. They're huge, you know. Here's my hand. These are butternut squash, by the way, but they're not. What you want to look for is one solid color that's very dark. It's gonna look pretty, I don't know how to describe it. If you're growing butternut squash, they're very, like, a lot darker, like sandier, almost like a butterscotch color in a way. But you gotta wait till the end of the season, damn near. They take about 90 to 120 days to actually fully mature. Now you'll notice the color change. This is too light. If you come over here, I have an older squash that's been growing. You'll see the difference. Right here, this one's a little tanner, and it's pretty much like the squash is pale, and then it just gets a tan. So when it's fully tanned and that golden bronze color, you'll know it's ready to go. But one of the telltale signs you'll have is the stem leading to the squash that's actually connecting to the plant right here. It's covered in grass right now. See as it's green? See how it's green? That'll be a lot browner. In fact, it'll probably be completely brown, and you'll be able to tell when it's ready to pick. But that'll be around October, sometime in that time period. And you'll actually harvest pretty much all your squash at the same time. Roughly, it'll be like batches. So, like in weeks apart, or a week or two apart. But yeah, I got squash all over. They produce like crazy. And I want to show you just what I'm dealing with here with this powdery mildew that I will have to spray all my plants. And I will tell you what to do if you want to spray your plants. As you can see here, here's that powdery mildew. That's what it will look like. You'll see the white little powdery marks, but you'll see even more on the other underside. You'll see those little splotches. That's what you're looking for. Right here, right there. It's all over the place, and it'll spread to any kind. There's a big squash. Big old squash right there. That is a huge one. It doesn't matter what it is. It'll spread to the zucchinis, which are sitting right here. Summer squashes. It'll spread to the pumpkins, which are in the same family. They're practically a winter squash. They are a winter squash, actually. As you can see here, I have to spray this ASAP. I do not want this to take out my entire crop. So, it's a serious matter, guys. You can't just let it sit here. It will mess you up. All right. So that you will have to watch out for. But yes, summer squash are definitely one of my top picks for growing a vegetable. Well, it's considered a fruit, I guess you can say, but let's just make things streamlined here, call it a vegetable. All right, some other pointers on squash. Pretty much pH 5.5 to 7. They like it a little acidic, but you know, they'll take just normal soil. Most people's soil's in that range anyways, so you won't have too much of a problem. Now when you plant it, you don't want to just plant it straight in the ground. I mean, granted, you could do that and it might actually grow, but you don't want to. You want to at least mix some compost into your soil. If you're planting into native soil, definitely mix in some compost. I would say add in some organic fertilizers like blood meal or bone meal or whatever you got. Add in all those fertilizers. You can make your own liquid fertilizer tea. Throw it in there. They'll take it. They will do well with just compost like green beans, and that is why I like to consider them also a survival crop, because I mean, nutrient wise, they can tolerate a lot. But I will say, the more you give them, the more they'll give back. So if you give them more nutrients, and you give them more phosphorus, and you give them more nitrogen, which is what they love, they'll give you more squash. So it's kind of up to you. Right, so a couple other tips would be just in the summertime when you're growing these and it's really hot outside, if you ever see them drooping, do not freak out, okay? This is a normal thing. They do droop in the summer heat. When it gets really hot outside, they don't like that. So what they'll do is actually like droop their leaves, which creates less surface area on their leaf, which actually helps them, like, you know, not get knocked out by the heat as because they're like satellite dishes damn near these. They're huge leaves. So if they droop their leaves, they're not going to be hit by that much heat. So don't be afraid if that happens. If they're drooping at night, that is when you need to water them. You need to water them ASAP, okay? Don't wait on that. If they're drooping at night, water them. They won't be bothered by the heat at night. I promise you. It's mostly the sun. So if they're drooping at night, definitely water them. They can take a beating on the water just like green beans, but I definitely wouldn't, you know, play games and just like be lazy and shit. If it's bone dry, water it, please. But if you forget once or twice, they're not gonna probably die. You'll see. Definitely, the plant will tell you if it needs water, if it's in that detriment of a state. And one more thing, saving seeds. Saving seeds is highly important. I'm considering it a survival crop. Saving seeds is highly important. Easy to save seeds, guys, I promise you. You don't need to play any kind of guessing game. It's when the fruit is ripe, you're ready to eat it, the seeds are also ready. Most people scoop the seeds and throw them away when they're eating their winter squash. But when the fruit is right and you scoop those seeds are just fine. Save those seeds, throw them in a bag. We'll wash them off first, let them dry and stuff, because there's gonna be some like slippery plant material on it, or you know, the guts of the squash. Let them dry, put them in a baggie, put them in the cooler, put them in your fridge, whatever, and save those seeds, okay? You can get tons of seeds just from one squash. I mean, I used one squash to plant this whole garden and I still had extra seeds. And they're probably going bad now because I didn't wash them off properly, but yeah, there's a lot of seeds you can get from squash to just last years, okay? And that's pretty much all I have. Also, oh, I almost forgot one important thing, which I already kind of touched up on, but prune your leaves. Like I said, prune your leaves frequently. They'll grow like crazy. Squash, unlike, I mean, if you only have like one squash plant, you're fine, okay? But if you have a bunch of squash plants and they're all spread out like mine right here, I would definitely prune your leaves at least like once every week and a half to 2 weeks, because they'll just grow back like crazy. But that's all I have for this one. Definitely grow squash, guys. It's a great plant to grow. It's not hard at all. It's a very easy plant. You just gotta watch out for powdery mildew and the squash vine borers. Don't play games on those guys. Watch out for them. They will destroy your crop. As long as you can avoid those two. Now there are other bugs like the squash beetles or something, but I've never had a problem with those over here. Maybe you'll have maybe it's chill. Maybe it's the location, who knows? But squash vine borers, definitely. Yes, definitely. So that's all I had to say in this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.